Junkyard Love Podcast. At what age do we learn how to have better Junkyard Love Podcast.
David Crayk, welcome to the Junkyard Love Podcast, my brother. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Like I've said a million times, I'm over the moon. I'm so excited. I love it. Thank you, man.
Thank you for the opportunity. The pleasure is all mine, really.
Yeah.
Just seeing you again and seeing you flourish is, amazing to me.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to be able to have our teachers on our Facebook still. Like it sounds like this low, like, oh, it's kind of nice, but it's actually very beautiful. How does that feel for you as a teacher to have your students in like, you have your couple years with them and you get to know them intricately, and then you watch them grow for 10, 15 years later. What is that even like?
It's pretty amazing. I have about 650 former students on my Facebook. And, just see them flourish, like you said, see them have kids, be parents, all that stuff. And what's really cool through Facebook, I've kind of been able to not only keep tabs on them, but I've actually visited them and gone to their weddings and things like that, so you can't really put a value on that. I mean, it's just amazing that you're able to do that. And, this technology kind of gives us that opportunity, and, you're right. I only knew them for a short couple of years, but now, some of them are like 50 years old and stuff, they're grandparents. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see them, progress through their own lives. And of course, there's a double-edged sword to everything. And, unfortunately, some people haven't made it that were my students. And that's, tragic, of course. But, that's kind of the way life rolls.
Yeah. It's nice to be able to have that open connection with them and kind of like drop in and see what they're doing. And also, if they ever need some advice from old Mr. Crayk, they have that open door. We have our magic rectangle that's just an open window to great perspective and advice if they want to,
It's funny, quite a few have taken advantage of that opportunity over the years.
What have they said? Like what are kind of you don't have to share like super details, but like what is the kind of thing that someone approaches you with of like, hey, can I get your perspective on this?
Well, I think, a lot of times it's the posts that they make on, and then I kind of throw out something to kind of soothe their, whatever is ailing them or something like that. And then they'll message me privately and tell me this is what's happened. They'll tell me something that's happened in their life. And then from there, I just give them kind of my perspective on it. And at the very least, it kind of, gives them an opportunity to realize, hey, this is going to pass. I have what it takes to get over this. And I've talked some people off a ledge, frankly. They've just wanted to throw up their hands and give up. And whatever encouraging word that I said to them ended up telling them to take the step towards the future, instead of just throwing up their hands and giving up.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really powerful position to be in. I've had my own instances of those same things. I was just talking with a friend the other day. He texted me. He's another Kelsa guy, class 2010, and he texted me this long text. He's like, "Man, I was driving and it was wet outside. There was a big puddle." And he said he was about to smash the puddle, but last second he noticed that there was a guy that he would have just totally doused if he hit it. And so he kind of swerved and he I guess he kind of made eye contact with the guy of like, I see you, and he kept going. And then he parked and he was going into the gym or something. And the guy approached him and the guy was like, held out his hand and said, "Hey man, I just want to say thank you for not splashing me. Like, you didn't have to go out of your way to not splash me. And I noticed that you did. So thank you." And he kind of expressed that he was having a tough day and that really helped him out. And so it's just like, man, us just acting off these little intuitions of not even necessarily like, I'm going to save this guy's life, but just being encouraging to someone or giving them a, hey, you're okay. It's pretty powerful stuff. It could be everything. It could be something so small to us, natural to us a lot of the times. Like a lot of us are so loving, if we just lean into it a little bit, something so little to us could be massive to someone else,
Well, I think it's really a surprise to them that I am still monitoring them or following them. And, sometimes they say some things that alarm me, that realize that they're hurting in some ways. And just the fact that, that I can say something to them, something positive, which is what I used to do with them. I said positive things back in the day. And of course, they all trust me, and then they're okay after that. Then they go forward.
Yeah.
And like you said, that positive thing, I mean, and I don't even a lot of times try to solve their problem. I just say, hey, listen, you can do this. This is going to pass. This is kind of the way things are. You got to, keep going forward, and then everything's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. A little encouragement goes a long way,
Yes.
especially from a figure that they trust,
Yeah. Right.
So what was that like? I mean, now and then even, when you, because I think about me, like my sister and I were talking about, like we didn't necessarily at that time, we certainly didn't have a father figure that we,
Right.
And I don't want to project like project father figureness all over you, but I wonder, like, do you contemplate that? Like, are you aware when you're a teacher of, hey, I kind of know that these kids don't really have someone they're looking up to at home, so I'm going to lean in a little more? Or is this really just like a non-intentional natural state for you to be in? I guess, like, what's that position like?
So I think back in those days, I made, my learning environment a safe place for people to be. And, let's be honest, I wasn't attracting the football player, cheerleader type, the ones that you would call the cool kids, right? I attracted kids that needed a place to be, a safe place. And I provided that safe place. And man, along the way, I made it super fun for them. And they're like, whoa, this dude, he's making things safe for me. There's no judgment here. He doesn't allow it. We're kind of like this cool community. We have our thing here. And so they, word of mouth kind of spread. And the next thing you know, my classes were bustling at the seams. And there were some kids that I spent a lot of time with more than others, like, for example, your sister. I mean, I spent a lot of time with her because she helped me with almost everything that had to do with the technical side. I mean, I relied on her heavily. In fact, there's many times I'd tell her, hey, Katie, you got to go to class sometime. It's like you can, and I would have kids that would show up that weren't, like, okay, why are you here? You should be in another class, but they wanted to be there. And, I think kids naturally saw me as that person that they could look to, father figure, whatever it was. I don't think I leaned in anymore for anybody unless they came to me and I thought they needed that. So yeah, it pretty much came naturally for me, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
everywhere I've gone.
It's a good place to be. Like we were talking about before, and I probably said it on this podcast a bunch of times. We're talking about, how you can kind of work on yourself in a way, or like your relationship with yourself allows you to show up and then be an environment for others to then do the same, and it's cool, when you're a teacher, especially, and we had that great theater at Kelso too. Like
Yes.
your space of like just your personhood, that people felt comfortable in, it extended, like it extended to
Yes.
that theater there, just like a car when we're driving, like you can kind of sense the edges of where your bumpers are. You kind of know where everything is. It kind of becomes you in a
Yeah.
sense, like the room you're in, if you're if you're a powerful being that like allows other people to feel safe in that environment, like you became that stage too, man.
Yeah. You're right. And what's really interesting is, I mean, we always met in that back room first, but then once we got to the stage, everything kind of came to life. And as kids grew confident, they started doing some magical things there. They just felt really good in their own skin. They just started creating things. And man, we saw some magical things on that stage. Like, I was in Bend a couple of weeks ago and I saw this. They had this kind of like community comedy show where this guy kind of organized, and at the end they had this group of improv people, that went up there and they would throw out some kind of idea and do the improv.
Yeah.
And the whole time I kept on thinking, you know what? If they could have just seen these kids at Kelso, I don't know, 20 years ago or whatever, how many years ago it was,
Yeah.
they could realize that they look like amateurs up there, even though they're these older people that are, that's their thing, right? That's what they do for fun, right?
Yeah.
And they had this kind of little improv troupe they had a kind of a cute name for. But man, some of the things that happened on that stage was just amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, to this day, when I go and see any kind of play or anything, I realize just how close I got to almost being professional even. It's scary.
Yeah, the natural talent. I think back like some of those guys that were in that class, like I mean, they're just awesome guys anyway, but like
Yeah.
just the talent that was displayed. And I remember, so we did, I can't remember if it was my senior year or my junior year, but it was one of your times we did like it's like 10 skits or something. It was basically like a improv night, but there were skits,
Yes.
SNL kind of
It
thing.
was like a variety show. We included the choir
Yeah. Oh
too.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
did musical numbers in between. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
thinking
remember
back to
that.
that, I mean, maybe if I watched a video, it wouldn't be as gut bustingly funny. But I feel like those were some really funny skits. Like those guys were smart, man. They can't. We had some funny stuff in there.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting? Those are the days when we had these things called rubrics, right? And I don't know if you remember this or not, or I was even doing this at the time because I was there 8 years, so there's a stretch of people, right? So I had these rubrics, and it was, you would rate whatever their skit or whatever performance they did from 1 to 4, and of course beforehand I introduced the rubric and what I was looking for, and kids over and over again hit the 4s, right? I mean, it was not a stretch for them because, like you said, there was so much talent there, and they seemed to be able to bring it out, right? But I kept on saying to myself, okay, we have these rubrics to go by, so and all the kids are pretty, sure that they can meet these rubrics. Very few even got 3s. I mean, everything was just coming out was dynamic. But then I got this inspiration. I was like, you know what? I want to take it to another level. Can I take it to another level? So I come up with this idea. It just came to me. I mean, I don't know what inspired it other than I just wanted to take it to another level to start giving out 5s once in a while. And when I gave out a 5, kids would go, a 5, but it only goes to 4. And I go, when you get a 5, that means you did something extraordinary, amazing. And and they go, well, so then afterwards people go, well, we should have a rubric for a 5, so we know how to achieve that. I go, no, when everybody sees the 5, everybody will know it, and I will definitely know it because I'm a trained eye. But I said it'll be so overwhelmingly cool and amazing and entertaining and just dynamic that everyone will know, hey, that's a 5.
Yep.
And of course, I started giving kids instant feedback after they did skits. So the other kids could hear me say what I was going to say. And I rarely said anything negative at all. So after a while, these kids kept coming to me, man, did I get a 5? Did I get a 5? And the next thing you know, the level, which was already high, went to this stratosphere. It went to the strat. I think you had already graduated actually when I come up with this inspiration. And I was seeing some magical things. I mean, and they were like trying to top each other. It was like, oh my gosh, I got to get a 5. I got to get a 5.
Yeah.
And it was pretty special period of time there.
Well, I mean, it's so crazy. It really is fascinating to raise the bar and realize how valiantly and wonderfully people will raise right to it. You know what I mean? Like, it reminds me of the Travis Pastrana. He was the first one to land the first backflip on a BMX or a dirt bike.
I know him well. I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so, right after that, within weeks, days, or whatever it was, everyone's nailing backflips. It's like, the 4 minute mile, same thing. Right. And it is so cool that by being inspiring, by just being encouraging, by like saying, hey, I think you could do better. And they're like, okay, I guess we'll try to do better. And everyone's like, we could do better. It's exciting. It's contagious, It's very fun to be inspiring and encouraging. And I'm sure your attitude as the teacher, even when you're out of earshot, I bet you the peer-to-peer conversation was like fairly encouraging as well.
Yeah, the word of mouth there was amazing. It got to the point where there was so many kids in the classes, like we had to start thinking about, okay, maybe we have to put a waiting list or something. And what's really weird is I actually got called into the powers that be. I won't really go into that too much. And they actually thought I was recruiting. I was like, no, it's just that these kids are taking it to the streets themselves and selling this. In fact, if the kids weren't included in the class, someone were just showing up, like I said before, and I'd have to say, hey, why are you here? It's like, I mean, you're going to get me in trouble here,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And
Katie told me I could come.
They thought I was recruiting so that I could make more money, And of course, I've never been, monetarily, motivated, you know. This
Yeah.
wasn't about that. This was just about the magic that came. And what was really cool about it is I never really defined what a 5 was, but everybody knew what, you know, I wanted something better, and that's what they just kept going for.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing that it's attainable, knowing that it's there and that you could hit it, you know. And also I think what's fun about acting and creating is, you know, when you're trying to, it's just like jamming with a band. Like, you know that you could hit that thing where you guys just get in the groove and you're going and you're like, we're in it now, you know, we're making a song, we're jamming, like we're creating the thing, you know, just knowing that it's available, and knowing that the people around you and you are collectively working towards it that's like this guy, Rafe, oh geez, I forget his name, darn it, Rafe Kelly maybe. He is like a parkour guy, you know, like running and like jumping and doing like tricks and whatever. And they talk about serious play. And he breaks down parkour as being serious play. It's like this athletic endeavor of people together that they just, you know, they turn the world into a jungle gym basically. And I like to, I think since I heard about that, I always see other areas where serious play is a thing. And you know, we're talking about our teenage years for sure. You know, we're outside of our adolescence when we're talking about this, but I think even in drama class and improv class, in acting, that's definitely a place for serious play. Like you can finally set down the whatever you think you need to be, whatever, you know, you're mad at your mom because she made you do this and whatever, you know, you got your teenage things, but in your class, you get to set it all down and have some serious play. You don't have to be yourself so much. You could just express and have fun, and you could be laughter with your friends.
You know, what was really cool about that whole thing is when I showed up on the scene, and as you know, usually you have a textbook with the class, right? And there was no textbook. So everything that you got, Jacob, I created pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I borrowed some stuff, you know, that I knew, like some of the drama games, but some of those drama games I come up with myself. And kids would just like, okay, what are we going to do today? They were like coming. And it got to the point as every year went by, I had to keep topping myself. I had to create new games. I had to come up with new exercises for them to do. Like, you know, I think, do you remember Uncle Joe's funeral? Where we did that elaborate thing, Uncle Joe's funeral?
It doesn't ring a bell yet, but
Well, anyway, so I come up with these scenarios: Uncle Joe's funeral, heroes, bomb shelter, and all these kind of scenarios. And they all had to create characters. And we went in this deep dive, you know, like they created their own story as it kind of evolved, right? And created their characters and stuff, especially like the heroes that was, you know, they had to create their own superhero. And I told them, you can't duplicate it. You got to come up with your own original superhero to fit into this. And I would give them a scenario, right? And this, I mean, we would spend, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks doing this thing. And it was like almost like we produced our own movie on the stage, you know?
Yeah.
And it just kept getting crazy like that. And then they'd come in the next year and they go, okay, which one are we going to do this time? You know, we did Uncle Joe's funeral because, you know, the first couple of years I used Uncle Joe's funeral until, you know, because it was so brilliant, all the different characters. And Uncle Joe's funeral, I kind of gave the characters, right? And then they had to choose them and then kind of make the character their own. But as time went by, they started creating their own characters within the scenario. So I just kept building and building and building. But man, they challenged me to come up with new stuff all the time, you know, and it's just amazing because it was kind of a mystery. Like, okay, what's he going to do today? You know, they would come in, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? They're all so excited. And it was just like almost overwhelming. But for some reason, I was able to keep that challenge. And being a kind of a creative person, it fed into that whole love of creating things, right, for me. And it just kept challenging me, you know, and I just kept on. Somehow I delivered.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very inspiring. I think I said something like that in a message, but from my standpoint, when I was younger, I think I saw you, I always just loved, I admired any adult who could kind of like break the adult mold. Like what, we're so serious and we go to meetings and like, I don't know. For some reason I had this, like when I was a kid, I wanted to just like, you're playing a game and you don't know it. Like just chill out for a second. Like let's just talk. I had this like weird thing, and I don't know. I never got that from you. Like it didn't seem like you were trying to ever play any games. You were just who you were.
Right. You know, it's like, and here was another thing too. Is, I mean, you got to be honest. I got the unmotivated. And I took the unmotivated and motivated them,
Yeah.
and it just kept happening over and over. And then what so here's an example I'm talking about. Sometimes through word of mouth, I'd get a guy that really didn't really fit in there, right? Because I had a certain type of kid that was kind of flourishing there. And they would show up and they would do one of two things. They would either go, "Oh, I want to check this out because it's kind of fun." Because every day in my class pretty much was fun. And I don't think any teacher could say their class was as fun as mine. I'll stand to the day I die to say that. And or they would come in and try to bully me, like, misbehave on purpose and do all that. And you know what? I would just go, "Oh, okay, what's this guy about?" And he would come in, a lot of times it would be seniors. For some reason, the older kids would do this. And the other kids would take this kid aside and say, "Listen, knock it off. This is Mr. Crayk. You're going to respect him. If you don't want to be here, transfer out because we want to have fun and you're delaying our fun." In fact, I would just say, well, that's one of the things I would say. Well, we're not going to go to the fun as long as we're misbehaving. And so I never really had to control my class. I'd just have to say something like that and they would just police themselves. And it got to the point where you get a guy like that, they would police them for me. I wouldn't even have to go and talk to them.
Yeah.
And the kid would do one of two things. He would leave or he'd stay. And I'd often have those type of kids that would stay and flourish. And then they would come up to me on their senior, when they were graduating and say, "You know what? I wish I would have taken this when I was a freshman because you taught me so much more than any other class in a lot of for life skills. Like I became confident. I, you know, I felt good about myself. I always felt good when I was in your class. It was always positive. And I realized that, I have this kind of side where I pick on others to make myself feel good. And I didn't have to do that anymore. What a great class this is. It's like, I wish I would have taken it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I
I mean,
got that
that's,
over and over.
yeah, that's powerful though. I mean, to like be able to reach that kid who refuses to be reached, you know what I mean? And you did it by not saying like I'm authority and you need to do what I say, but you did it by fostering the environment to where like, you're I'm going to use the word cronies. Your cronies basically like came in and were like, "Hey man, this place is cool. Like if you lean in, it's like, we're going to have some fun here. Let's do this thing."
Right, right. And, it was a beautiful thing because I didn't really have to, do any kind of disciplinary stuff because everybody just was like, "Hey, we want to have fun." We get it. Every once in a while, I have to remind them, because as a group, they might get a little out of hand. And then mainly because when you're playing, I mean, I'm not going to rein in that too much, right? I want the play to happen,
Yeah.
right? Because like you said, that's what I really accentuated. And there were certain things that they loved that I didn't do a lot. I made them special. Like I had this game called Silent Frozen Bombs. I don't know if you remember that one.
I don't know. My memory, man. I'm sorry. I'm sure I had a blast, but
Well, anyways, when I say silent, you just walk around on stage silently and move. And then I'd say freeze, and you'd have
I
to
remember
freeze.
this.
If you move, then you'd be out in the audience, right? And if I said bomb, you had to hit the floor, right?
Yes.
And that game was so fun for everybody. They're like, "Hey, let's play Silent Frozen," because I'd always have two or three, things like clump or up, sideways, down, or something that we would do to warm up, right? But Silent Frozen Bombs, I'd go in, "We're gonna do Silent Frozen Bombs," and they would go, "Oh," they'd start cheering almost, right? And I can't remember who he was. There was one guy was like it was hard to eliminate him. But I
Yeah.
would, and of course I had these little tricks. It really, I know it was my own creative thing, but it was really a takeoff on Simon Says in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So how do you see in retrospect, now that you look back, or I mean, maybe even during that time you were acutely aware of it, how do you see how you taught differently than maybe other teachers? And I'm not just saying like at Kelso High School. I'm just saying like teachers or like anybody with a teaching opportunity to young people. As a young person, if that teacher isn't inspired with what they're doing, it's hard for the kid doesn't necessarily get inspired. And I feel like, you led with your inspiration, like it's just at the front of your chest, and that I feel like that's why, I mean, someone like me, when I was, I was a little, kind of a punk rock kid. Like I didn't really like other people telling me what to do, but I was so willing to do whatever you had going on, So I guess I wonder, like, And I also I'm always thinking about like new teachers who might be listening, or like how maybe they could approach their own teaching life too. Yeah, I guess maybe just being inspired as a teacher or a leader versus not being inspired. Like where do you see the importance of that?
Well, obviously, as a student, when I was growing up, I had a role model that I looked to. And, at that time, of course, I never knew I was going to be a teacher someday, even though this guy really totally inspired me. And frankly, when I became a teacher, there's a guy named by the name of Greg Shook. And I grew up in Southern California. And this guy looked like Warren Beatty, when he was regularly good looking, like Warren Beatty. I don't know if you know anything about him, but he's kind of a legendary guy with the women. This guy we'd see him at lunchtime today. Sometimes he had a sports car back in those days when everybody had these fuddy-duddy cars. And he always had it seemed like he was dating a beautiful woman. And so it was like, I was completely drawn to him. And then he's taught this thing called contemporary affairs. And of course, this was during the Vietnam War. So we had a lot to talk about, right? This shows you how old I am. But
Mhm.
he dressed like, I don't know, dressed like, um, well, he kind of dressed like Steve McQueen. He was just this cool guy, right? And he'd walk in and he had some pointed toe boots, and just everybody was just like, wow, this guy's terrific. And he had this complete charisma. And so when I became a teacher, that was kind of my role model for what I wanted to be. And to me, it's like, even though you have to have your own style, I kind of borrowed from him in a certain way. And he was kind of a rebel. And I've always been kind of this rebellious guy. I mean, I got to tell you that um, I really thought outside the box most of the time I was teaching there, when you were in my student. And that didn't go over very well, because when you dare to be different, which is my lifetime motto, and that's definitely the way Greg Shook was, you become a target for those of the powers that be. And sometimes it's a green eye of jealousy, right? And they want to try to think, what's this guy doing? What's he have? And for me to transfer that whole thing, even though Greg Shook was my model, and what's really interesting about him is he would talk about the Vietnam War and he'd have all these great insights, and we were all learning, and we are all like, I couldn't wait to get to his class, right? Because it was so exciting. But then one day the administrators came to him and said, where's the books? And he said, I'm sorry, but I got to take the books out. So we'd have these books, and then we'd start reading the boring stuff. And we're like, and then finally I think he did it maybe 2 class periods. And then when we showed up the third class period, we started reading the books, and he said, what the heck? And he threw the book against the wall and just said, collect the books up. We're going back the way I want to do it. And, there's a lot of risk to that, and I never had a textbook to go by while I was there. I didn't have it all, mapped out.
Yeah.
So, and when I came to school, I had fun too. I mean, I was making all of you guys have fun too. Not making you joined in the fun. But man, that wasn't like work to me then. I mean, I've taught other things over the years, right? A good teacher can teach anything. But when you bring your own style and your own creativity and your own curriculum and it becomes your baby, right? And you start tweaking it and you see the results of it. And I mean, you talk about somebody's love language and their love tank being full, like mine is words of affirmation. I can tell you what, kids would come in every single day and give me words of affirmation. And of course, I would return it too.
Yeah.
I never was negative. I didn't judge them. And if you're a teacher and you want to be in that little box that they put you in, it's going to be a hard day for you. And it's
Yeah.
getting to the point now, where teachers' hands are kind of tied. They can't get as close to students as I once did. I'd like to see them go back to that.
Do you see a world where we might be leaning more back into that? I don't. It does.
Actually, I see it going
No.
the other way. Yeah, I don't. In fact, the people that I know that are still teaching, they just can't wait to get out. And it used to be such a joy to go to class and teach people like you and your sister, and I can name constantly, just
Oh,
down
yeah.
the road. And there was kids that were so unsure of themselves and so not feeling good about being in their own skin, and they were getting picked on, outside of our class. They'd come in our class, they were a different guy. And as time goes by, they started getting confidence to stand up to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And they started creating things and started getting, say, hey, I can do things. And there's a lot of former students that have gone into the creative side, or still trying to figure out a way to make money being creative, right? That we're all in that program at that time, because I know I follow them.
Yeah.
And the ones that have walked against it are really unhappy people, but the ones that stuck to that seem to be happy.
Well, so when you have conversations with people who are still teaching, I don't know. I guess I try to think. I was almost afraid that you would say that, actually, because you kind of hear that and you can kind of get it. I mean, I think it must be so difficult to be a teacher, regardless of any subject. Just think of things like technology. I'm sure that if I was a kid, I'm sure that I would be right now, when we have like Chat GPT and these things. I'm sure that would be such a smart ass to my teachers about, like, they're trying to explain something, but I've got the answer on my phone from Chat GPT. I'm sure I would. It must be so difficult. So those people that you talk to, I'm sure they reach them some ways, right? I'm sure there's like certain students they reach. Like, what do you think people in today's modern climate are doing to still reach their students in some way? Is there anything?
Well, I think that if they make their class interesting, and it has a lot to do with their subject matter, then that's how they reach people. If they make it interesting and fun, that's important. But unfortunately, when they reach to do that, they have the administrators tell them, well, wait a second, we have to do these certain things, right? And it's really, they have to really be careful getting close to kids, like it wasn't a problem before. And I would have a feeling that I would have even more trouble with the powers that be if I was a teacher today, because there's no way I would compromise. I'd still be that guy,
Yeah. Yeah, you want me to stop being human to this person right to their face because it doesn't work on paper? Like, come on.
Yeah, you got to have the human element in there, or, it just becomes we're all robotons, just walking around, waiting for the bell to ring, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For what? Like, what? What's your end goal? Like, what's
I remember back in those days, you'd do our warm up, and then we'd have whatever we were working on at the time, and we'd all like meet in groups and get ready to create. And the next thing you know, the bell would ring, and everybody's like, whoa, I don't want to go to my next class, right? I mean, if you can get that kind of excitement, that's a really great thing. And you know what, those 48-minute class periods or whatever it was might have drug on when you were taking algebra, but they didn't drag on when you were in my class. They were like, oh my goodness, I want to keep doing that. I don't want to stop. It was hard. And I'd say, well, we got to go.
Yeah. I mean, if you're interested in something, it's so nice to be able to lean into it, and it's worthwhile, especially when there's an adult saying, like, hey, you're having fun, and like that's what you're supposed to be doing. Like, it's good that you feel excited. Like, you don't have to be nervous about the test all the time. I think I don't know. I mean, I even think back. So for me, it's very easy to love your class. Like, even before, I loved acting and all that stuff. I feel that, I felt at home, obviously, immediately when I walked in. Everybody felt that way when they walked in your class, but it was just super exciting for me. But even, history, for example, was not ever anything. I think even at a young age, I was always very much like, how are you guys so sure that it happened like this? That is an insanely like what a leap. Like, someone wrote this down and then you believe them, and then this person wrote like, history was always something when people were telling me, I'm like, really? That's what happened? But I will say there was this gentleman, I don't know if you ever knew him, but he was around the same time, Mr. Clausen. He was a history teacher there. And I remember like he would show us videos, and he got my attention because, and I don't want, as I'm saying this out loud, I don't want to like incriminate everything. It's been so many years, but he would basically show us he would show us war movies, and he would pause it at certain points and more or less say, like, that's bullshit, that didn't happen. Like he would kind of like break it down and tell us that he would give us his personal experience, show us a little bit of like what the movies in Hollywood say, and then he would tell us what really happened, and then kind of explain the portrayal of like why it was said to be this way, or hey, you know, Hollywood is gonna obviously add a romance in there that's gonna make you like focus on these different things. But I remember that stood out to me because he was someone who was willing to like kind of break the thing because he wanted to teach us something that was like he was actually passionate about. He wanted to tell us like what his view of the world really was. And suddenly when they break that, when they pause the movie and say, hey, that didn't happen, that was bullshit, suddenly you get guys like me who are paying attention. Like, I wasn't paying attention before, and suddenly I'm like, huh, this guy's being truthful to us. So I just think like any subject, you know, if the teacher can kind of, I think there's a reason why that teacher even began teaching in the first place. You know, there's like something that they want to lean into and express to other people. And I don't know. I think as a student, we could feel when they're hitting it. You know, we could feel when they're on that pulse because we get to be a part of that. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes. And, you know, as we know, history that we learned in the books, there's a lot of things in the gray areas that we're learning now because of technology, and you can just almost Google it. And of course, even when you Google it, you have to go, okay, maybe this isn't true too. So it's getting to the point now where we were like, people are rewriting history.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how much it's such a kind of a weird sentence, and it takes you down a path that you want to be careful with. But how do you know you could trust those Google results? You know, like just because Master Daddy Google says it happened doesn't mean that it's exactly that way, you know. Yeah. And it, you know, that's just a part of like getting older and learning about perspectives, and, you know, the old like the winners of history are the ones who write history and that sort of stuff. So there's in this information landscape we have here, it definitely is. I think everyone can resonate just trying to figure out what the hell is truthful, what's actually going on. But I think the best bet for me, I love trusting my intuition. I love when the person across from me is speaking truthfully, and I sense that they're speaking truthfully. I love just 100% allowing that and trying to like, I don't know. I like trusting my intuition is what I'm trying to say.
No, I get it.
Yeah. Okay. So leading off with talking about new teachers. So new time teachers who are coming into the world of teaching, even people who maybe think of young people who might be maybe inspired to try to see, they're saying, hey, look, we've got other teachers who are saying they want to get out of here. They're not really able to, the administrative stuff is like getting in their way. They're not able to teach, but you got people listening right now who are probably like, nah, I don't accept that. I'm going to find a way to teach these kids. Yeah. I'm going to find my way. What words of encouragement might you have for those people?
Well, hey, we need good teachers. And, you know, I think if you want to be a teacher, you really obviously can't be in it for the money. And you have to really give something of yourself. Use your own style. Stay true to yourself. It's always the best advice, that old Shakespeare, to thine own self be true, you know. It's like if you feel comfortable while you're in front of these kids and you're leading them and they're looking, I mean, that's one of the things that really put a lot of pressure on me. Even when I left the campus, right, I had eyes watching me. And that's a heavy responsibility, you know, and you have to be a solid role model for them. And in this day and age of technology, you know, obviously you have to embrace technology. You're almost forced to do that. And there's with technology comes a lot of ways to create, stuff to supplement what you're told you have to teach. And I think you go into that creative side and you create stuff that's fun for the kids, that's engaging for something they do. I mean, we learn a lot more through experience and taking action than we do by just reading stuff, right? So, if you can make it an active thing, then I think you'll be successful. And, I don't want to dissuade people from being teachers at all. I'm just, I'm disappointed that it's kind of gotten to that. But I'm sure there's some wonderful people out there that want to be teachers that are going to inspire the next generation of youth. Hopefully you got a good grasp of technology, because you definitely have to have that. And, I had a little technology in my class. I was teaching kids how to do, run the lights and the sound and all that stuff. But man, that technology is like archaic compared to what they have now. And it's actually easier. So if you can take that technology and turn it into some kind of activities for them to do, to where they can learn through those activities, then man, you're mining some gold.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. would be my advice to them.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they'll find it. I mean, and I think that as we always have as humans, as a society, is we as our technology advances, we find new ways to utilize it, and we come up with ways of solving problems. Not only do we discover new problems, but we find ways of solving them in creative ways that we never would have thought of before that technology. It expands us. So, I mean, as much as we want to try to predict it being the same in a couple of years, it might be a whole new different thing that we can't even like put into words or try to piece together what it may look like with the AI advancements. It's happening so quickly that I'm sure there's going to be plenty of bad about it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of negative about it. I'm sure, we're all still dealing with the TikTok attention span, and we all have our own, I'll sit there on TikTok myself. I'll sit there on Reels myself. So, I'm right in the middle of it in everything, but I'm optimistic. I think I'm excited about what the possibility of our advancements in the technology will be. I hope it doesn't lead people further into themselves and less connected with one another. But we'll see. I try to insert optimism. I would hate to see a bunch of students just sitting at home in like their little pods and just talking to their laptop AI teacher that day or whatever. Just because I got so lucky to experience great teachers face to face that I couldn't imagine who I'd be without it.
Well, there's a lot of that going on though already,
Yeah.
where they just sit there at home and they learn, through the technology. And, I had a granddaughter that was living here for a while, and she was going to the local school. And I mean, I was like, "Do you have any homework?" And she's like, "No, we get our iPads out, and they do all their assignments on there." And when we visited the classroom at the beginning of the year, the teachers as much said that. So, I don't really know how that looks because it wasn't like that when I was teaching, but it just seemed like she was kind of apathetic to learning. But that was, that's a singular example, right? There was probably plenty of kids that engaged the learning and were learning quickly and creating amazing things. I mean, it's amazing the students nowadays are creating things on their own that are going to shake the earth. Like there's somebody I think was like 18 or 19 years old, and she figured out a way to attack cancer cells that they're starting to use now. So, there's an example of what I'm talking about. She was just like a high school student.
Yeah.
So,
Incredible.
So, hey.
Yeah, there was clearly somebody on her path that like either encouraged her or lit a fire under her butt by not encouraging her, whatever it was. But, it's still going
Encouragement on. or giving her the opportunity or, presenting the information that she needed. And she took that and synthesized it and come up with this, amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's exciting, man. I'm looking forward. Like I said, I'm optimistic. I want to take the time machine back a little bit. If you'll join me, sir,
Sure.
Hop into the DeLorean.
All right.
I want to go back to before you were a teacher. I want to go back to. I think I'm kind of wanting to think. I want to get inside your mind before you were a teacher, or like kind of what inspired you to teach other people, or maybe I think it's probably a natural state of your being, I would say, and it probably just seemed inevitable that you would end up, inspiring people in such a way. But I also love to, I don't know, I want to wrap my head around where you were at before you decided to teach, before you, or any instances where you noticed that your input or your leadership, like, people are listening to, or you could actually affect change in other people and going, I could actually teach people. I have something worth knowing that I could effectively teach people. I know that there's one of my rambling questions that are impossible to answer, Dave, but
No, it's all right.
take me back, man. What was it like before you started teaching?
So, I always was a really great student and I liked school. And when I first got out of high school, Vietnam was still kind of there, right? And so we were all waiting to maybe potentially be drafted and stuff. And so I started going to college there at Fullerton College in Fullerton, California. And I was going to be an elementary teacher. And man, college for the first time, I really wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't mature enough. And so I ended up dropping out and kind of putting my dream to the side to be a teacher someday. And I think it had a lot to do with not only that gentleman that I mentioned, Greg Shook, but also my grandmother was a teacher, Laurel Bell Crayk, and I just had this really great relationship with her, and she kind of inspired me to be even consider that. But I went off to the military, and a lot of things happened there in the military when I was there. And it was kind of like that dream of being a teacher someday got pushed aside, right? I was just busy with raising a family, I was married at the time, and I had 3 children almost immediately when I was a young man. And so I was kind of overwhelmed with being a good father and trying to raise my family and provide for my family. And the military kind of gave me that sort of um, avenue for where I could, take care of my family. But then my whole earth was shaken. My wife, my first wife, ended up just leaving all of us, me and the 3 kids, to our own designs. And so, I went from, this happy family man to this guy that had to take care of 3 kids. And I was trying to get my college degree. And where I was stationed at, they had this degree program in this thing called in healthcare management. And so I changed my dream to being a teacher to working in a hospital, like being in charge of a hospital. And this program taught me how to, do all the things from maintaining a boiler room to, doing the business office in a hospital. And so I got my bachelor's degree in that. And then I got out of the military after my first wife died in an automobile accident. And of course, we were divorced. She was ex at that time. And so I knew I permanently had the kids forever. And I got out of the military and I got this job as a carpet cleaner of all things. And I was like working really late at night. And I was just so disappointed, and my future really looked bleak. I mean, it was so overwhelming to take care of 3 young kids by myself as a single dad. This is in the 80s now, that I couldn't focus on anything else, even though I did complete my degree program and got my degree in healthcare management. So I tried to get a job in healthcare management. And then I found out I had to have a master's degree. And I went, oh my goodness. It's like they wouldn't even look at my application almost at that time. There was just so many people in that field too, and they all had master's degrees. So I was competing against people I couldn't compete against. So I had to pay the bills, so I kept doing the carpet cleaning. Well, this one guy came to me from this church I was attending, and I told him how frustrated I was with, and I just didn't feel like I had any direction. And he told me, you know what, you should go substitute teach. And I was living in this town called Riverside at the time. And there was a school district real close by called Moreno Valley. It was connected to March Air Force Base, which is there in Riverside, right on the outskirts. And I said, oh, I always wanted to be a teacher, but man, it's just too late for me. I can't see myself. He goes, no, you have a bachelor's degree. All you have to do is, pass a couple tests, and they'll start hiring you as a substitute and see what you think, So I thought, well, there's, okay, I'm going to clean carpets at night. I'm going to, substitute teach during the day, and then try to find some time for my kids in there too, so I was pretty busy. So I started substitute teaching, and almost immediately I knew I was in my place. I knew this is what I was meant to be. And right away I started connecting with kids, really troubled kids too, a lot of them. It seemed like I do really better with the kids that have some angst,
Yeah.
And and the other kids it's not that I didn't track some of them too, but basically the next thing I know, they were hiring me as a substitute to be the long-term teacher when a teacher had to have a baby or something like that. So for the first 2 years of my teaching, I did it as a substitute, but they never knew I was the substitute because I took the classes over, and I was basically their teacher.
Yeah.
And there was a couple I started teaching from day one. And what's really interesting, I am actually still in contact with that first class of kids that I taught.
Wow. Okay. So how old are they now ish?
They're like, well, the oldest one is like 52. In fact, I just went to his wedding this summer.
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
it was a beautiful thing. And then of
Cool.
course, he treated me like, I was royalty while I was there, him and his new spouse. And
you walked his wife down the aisle and everything.
Well, they kept on taking pictures of me with each other. I was a pretty major part of the
That's awesome.
of the ceremony. But anyways, so right away, I could tell that this was my jam. It's like hey, I found my place. And then I went to Cal State San Bernardino and got my teaching credential. And then I ended up getting my master's degree in special education, and then eventually I got my master's degree in teaching. So, as I kept going forward, and then I got my first teaching job, real teaching job, which I think was getting paid like $10,000. That's what they paid teachers back in those days.
Crazy.
And yeah, it was pretty crazy. And so I just, leaped from there. And it was never a stretch. I always felt really natural. Um, I always, because I was this kind of rebellious guy that was creative, I always did things outside the box, and the kids loved it. And so I just kept getting reinforced, right? And then just kept going forward and forward and forward. And now I'm a retired guy, and that's kind of how I always knew that I was going to be a teacher, and it just went really well for me. I
Yeah.
mean, what a blessing to find out your calling. I mean, it was a calling, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey man, I'm glad you didn't just live this whole life cleaning carpets. I mean,
Yeah, could you imagine that? I mean, I'm
big-
sure I wouldn't have done that. I might have figured out something. Maybe I got my master's degree in healthcare management.
Yeah.
But hey, it was my destiny. It was
Yeah.
my destiny.
Can I ask you a little bit about, you mentioned some hardships during those times as a single father. I mean, I'm just picturing you, trying to work during the day and then carpet cleaning at night. Can I ask you about your mindset around that time? Did you ever deal with anything like depression? I talk on this podcast about, I like to talk openly about things like suicide and stuff, so it's not so stigmatized. Did you deal with anything like that around that time?
So what was really interesting is I was actually in a really good frame of mind afterwards, after I got through the adversity. But there was a time when I was like completely overwhelmed and I was pretty depressed. And I had this other guy that came to me, and it always seems to be somebody is like I don't know what you call that, but they show up the right time and say the right thing.
Mhm.
And he told me, he says, man, you're like a ship without a rudder. You need to sit down and write some goals out of what could make you happy. Right. And then go about trying to achieve that. And if you focus on that, then you're going to be happy someday. And so, despite the fact that I was probably severely depressed, of course, I didn't have a lot of time. I mean, think about it. I was cleaning carpets at night. I was substitute teaching during the day. And then I had to spend some time with my kids and get some sleep somewhere in there too, which is
Yeah.
about that time was maybe 3 or 4 hours a night, if that. Um, so I started writing down these goals, right? I started saying, hey, this is what I want in a spouse, a future spouse. This is what I want to do. I want to finish my degree. I want to get my teaching credential. And I wrote it down, and I actually put it up somewhere where I could see it. And little by little, I started to achieve those things. I got my degree. I got my credential. I got, um, you know, an advanced degree. I met a woman that I fell in love with that ticked off all the boxes for a woman that I was looking for. And that truly made all the difference in the world, because right away she took on me and my 3 children. And so they had a child, they had a mother,
Yeah.
which is really what they needed. And,
Yeah.
I was worried that I was never going to be married again. I never thought anybody would be with a guy with 3 kids. It's like,
Yeah.
who would take that burden on? And I'm still married to that woman to this day. She's 38 years later, which is pretty cool. And
Congrats, man. That's
I mean,
beautiful.
she made all the difference in the world. And that guy telling me to sit down and write down my goals and make it visual, and do some kind of concerted effort to try to start working on those things. I even had down what I wanted in a wife. And this woman that I met, that I'm married to now, she ticked off all the boxes, man. She just, she just, everything that I wanted in a woman, she was it. And luckily enough, I found that she, fell in love with me too. And we got married.
Yeah.
So my life changed right away, but I'd have to say my whole life, I was, I kind of fought depression. I pretty much my whole life. I'd say it's been maybe in the last 10 years that I'm not depressed anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there was even some point where I had to take medication, like when I was teaching you, even just to
Yeah.
control my impulses, because, when you get into depression, those kind of things about self-harm and all that comes into your mind, even though on the outside looking in, people think you have an idyllic life.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things with brain chemistry too, that where you just kind of go, why do I, things are kind of going good for me. Why am I feeling like, I want to throw it all away?
Yeah.
And I really had to fight that impulse to sabotage myself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I managed to do that.
Well, for one, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate you diving into that. I'm sticking to something you said earlier, a few minutes before I asked that. You said something about taking action. You used the word action. And it's something I've been thinking a lot of lately about. I spent a lot of the last 6-7 years thinking about, reading about, listening to, exploring with other people, self-reflecting, everything to do with like depression and how our culture sees it, how our society sees it, how we treat it, what causes it. I've really just spent so much time diving. I turned my obsessive compulsive disorder on depression in myself, basically, and just I think about it a lot. I'm on the other side too. I don't really consider myself to be a depressed person. I deal with depression for sure, but I think there's power in, as much as it's been useful and important for me to lock my door, turn off the TV, and just sit with myself, journal, explore, figure out what the hell is going on, right? But I really, really, and especially this last year, I think, action, getting outside of wallowing in my self-pity in my apartment, getting outside of trying to fix myself all the time, realizing that I've just been telling myself that Alan Watts has the backwards law, it is an act of telling yourself that there's something wrong with you by consistently trying to fix something about yourself, right? It's kind of this mind bender, and I'm never trying to say well, your depression isn't real, you're feeling what you're feeling. But I think there is this magical, beautiful, warm blanket of action, of opening the door and seeing, you've probably heard this too, Dave, all spiritual teachers tell us serve others. That's the way out. If you can find someone who needs help and you could help them, suddenly you realize it's been hours since you've been thinking about yourself and your depression and whatever.
Right.
You're in action. So I guess, I don't know, does that spark anything for you? Like the actionable act of getting out of our own minds? Do you see that as a genuine, I think that's a secret of the universe or something. There's something really magical about that, trying to take action.
I think you hit on it really, majorly when you said something about service. I mean, I pretty much my whole life was in service to other people. I was a teacher for over 30 years. And every day that I came in, they filled my love, I mean, they just told me words of affirmation about how great I was. I mean, and then you start weighing that out about, okay, am I really depressed? I mean, all these people like what we're doing here, right? And, so I didn't really think about all that much, and I was really having a good time, and I'd have to say generally I was happy. And now, even when I'm retired, I don't think I've ever really been happier because I'm doing things. And that's what you said, action, right? And here's another thing is that I've been helping others. I've been spending a lot of time with other people now, and I've changed from being a deliverer of information to someone that listens to people and observes them. And I don't give them advice unless they ask for it. Sometimes I just say, well, what do you think? And then they start saying, well, this is what I think. And I said, okay, take action. And the next thing you know, they're okay, right? And so, yeah, service to others is really key. I mean, right now I'm on a board of it's a ministry, and they work with people with addictions. And so I've kind of become an advisor to this whole group, and it needed to be kind of I don't know, operated more successfully, or it needed to have its rough edges sanded. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. And as a byproduct, I've been interacting with addicts, and I've been kind of a spiritual advisor to them. I mean, I have them call me a lot, and really all I've ever done for them is just listen to them, right? And a lot of them are doing a lot of good things. And, and of course, as an addicted person, you always have to worry about going back to your addiction, right? So there's that too. And one thing I don't do, and I never did when I was a teacher, I didn't really judge people, you know? And I just try to accept them. And what's really interesting is, and this is true about kids, if you're not genuine, they sniff out the bullshit.
So quickly.
And it's like, so that's where my success was. They knew that the love that I showed them was genuine. And now that I'm working with addicts, they can tell that I truly love them and I care about them. And that's not easy to communicate people, especially when everybody's so self-absorbed, But you're right. If you step outside yourself and you do things for others, you don't got time to think about your own problems, man.
Yeah.
Or you hear these other people that are like, you go, oh my gosh. And not only is your life going, sour, but you keep making decisions that make things worse,
Yeah.
And when you're hearing those stories, you're like, man, my life is fantastic. I mean, it's like, and it really is fantastic. If I look at my life, it's like, oh my goodness, how could I complain?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it truly, I've lived a life of service, like you said, and I think that is the key. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's like I said, there's all these spiritual advisors, all these spiritual teachers. They have some way of kind of telling us that, and I've heard it, and then I start taking action in my own life and doing things that I'm genuinely lit up by, that I know that are helping other people. Because like you mentioned earlier, you get the messages. I have my version of that, and so I can see firsthand, like, okay, this thing that took me all this time and I made it, and like hopefully it was worth it. Well, even though I didn't get it for the response, I did it because it's something fulfilling for me to do. It does feel good for someone to say like, hey man, that thing you said impacted me. Like that helped me understand my situation I'm going through. It's like, okay, like one person was positively affected by that. Like that feels really good. It's reaffirming,
Yeah, it is reaffirming. But what's really interesting is you do it out of self-sacrifice, and you do it to help that person out of genuine care. And like I said, if you're not genuine, they're going to sniff that out, right? Because they know what fake looks like, right? Fake concern and all that stuff. And they're used to people letting them down. But that's another thing too. I've been consistent in, lots of people's lives. And so they know I'm going to be around. They can call me anytime I want. I don't say, oh, hey, I'm too busy or anything like that, And if you go about doing that and have that attitude, the reaffirming stuff comes almost naturally. They start telling you that, like when I was a teacher, I mean, I didn't ask for people to say, hey, you're my favorite teacher and I love you. And I'm having 50-year-old men tell me that, I mean, I'm having people that they're in their 40s and 30s who I'm long removed from that, like, man, you really influenced my life. I mean, how reaffirming is that?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't about attaining money. It wasn't about attaining recognition. And because I did things outside the box and kind of was a rebel and kind of just threw myself at everything, that came with risk.
Yeah.
It made me a target for, you got a lot of people there want to like, okay, I want to take this guy down,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's people like that. But when you serve others, and like you said, it feels good inside when you see the results of that. I mean, seeing you do this podcast, I'm living vicariously through you, man. I mean, you were on my stage. Now you're on your own stage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what better thing could that be for me reinforcing what I did was right for you, right?
Yeah.
Maybe just a small part, but hey, who cares? Right? You never know. You never know how you're going to influence people. I have this thing, it's like a theory, it's called matrix of influence. I call it the matrix of influence. So what I always wanted to do is and I truly thought about this even from the very beginning. I wanted to put this guy, David Crayk, into everybody's life and who he was about and what he represented. And when they took my class or they had some kind of, connection with me in some way, I wanted them to take that little piece of me out into the world, right? And I never knew if it was going to work or not. So I just was always myself, and I always brought what I could bring and was creating and just providing them the opportunity to excel. And through their success, they ended up taking it or leaving it, right? I mean, sometimes they weren't as influenced by me, but I always try to be positive, no judgments, just be humble and show them love. And then they go out in the world and take a little bit of Dave Crayk with them, right? And in a way, it's kind of the only way you can have any kind of this kind of a taste of immortality. Because, I mean, like I said, I have 50-year-old people that really still see me as a significant person in their lives. And so what I set out a long time ago, over 30, like almost 40 years ago, has really come to fruition through the lives of other people. And I'm hoping that they're going to take that little piece that I gave them and they're going to spread that little piece of Dave Crayk everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like a matrix of influence. It's kind of like, I'm sure I influenced thousands of people. And then those thousands of people take a little bit of what I do into the world to somebody else, and then they take it. And, there's probably people that I don't even know that have been influenced by me.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Oh, guaranteed. Yeah. Yeah. The ripples of influence. What'd you call it? The matrix
of influence is what I call it.
Matrix of influence. I love that, man. I think that's so powerful. I love to really think about, I'm thinking about, I mentioned my buddy not splashing that guy with water with his truck, I mean, maybe that guy went out and he did something nice for somebody else, or, because he's in a little bit better mood, reality is this, that really is what's going on here. Like we are very powerful with each of our interactions. And it's like self-expression and just being able to open as yourself is just, people are drawn to it, and like you said, students and kids especially, they can tell when you're bullshitting. They've got intuitions that we can't put into words. They're before words even happen, man. We're communicating. There's so much communication happening without the words. So if you just try to say, hey, all that stuff isn't real, but the words I'm saying are real, kids are like, okay, you're doing that thing where you lie to me, and what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm playing with your game, or am I pretending you're being truthful? Kids are so smart like that,
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I mean, we had so many wicked smart kids on my stage. It was just crazy. I mean, there was so much talent. The place was oozing with talent almost the whole time I was there. It just, and, I gave them the opportunity to start showing their talent and stuff, and that whole thing, it was, and I don't know why it came to me. Like, one of my favorite poets is Robert Frost, and he wrote The Road Not Taken, right?
Everyone was.
I don't know if The Road Not Taken is real famous about the going to the path, and he took the one that's less traveled and made all the difference. So the Dare to Be Different, which was originally, my creation, right? I knew I had to have some kind of thing for people to latch onto. I had those shirts made, actually through Alicia Huckabee, whose dad's Rick made the shirts for me. And it had the drama, comedy and tragedy, because there's always two sides to everything, right? And then I only gave those T-shirts out when they were in my plays. That's the only time they got those T-shirts. Nobody got them, and those became treasured people, because they realized, hey, I was in the play, and I, gave them a little recognition. But to have people take that Dare to Be Different into the world, which is what I hoped, and really what it was trying to say is, hey, screw you to all those detractors. I'm going to do what I want my way. And, I told everybody, if you dare to be different, there's some risk to that, because people want to put you in a box all the time. And if you resist that, I mean, all the great people resisted that. All the people that created things throughout history, they resisted that. So I don't know what caused me to come up with that slogan, but that slogan's followed me throughout my whole life, pretty much, at least for 40 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can say that to any of the kids that I took there in the drama program. They know exactly what that meant to them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's profound. My sister and I talk about it all the time. I mean, I honestly find ways. I mention you all the time. You've been mentioned on this podcast multiple times. I bring up the Dare to Be Different. It had a profound influence on me. I think I had this, at that time, I already had this natural, like, I want to be different. I think I'm different. I loved, I go to Warped Tour, and, that's not that punk rock, but to me, it was punk rock at the time. I remember the lead singer of Rise Against, he was on, I thought they were just the coolest band anyway. I love their music.
They are cool.
Yeah, definitely. Man, they're so good. But he was on the stage at Warped Tour. I remember him like saying things about the government. He's like, the government doesn't want you, blah, blah. And I remember just being like, dude, you could just say stuff like that? Like, you're just allowed to. I was so inspired by him just being an artist and like expressing something that like the other people, we're not allowed to say that. It awoke that within me just by seeing him express who he was. So it's
And
just, go ahead.
oh, what I think is really most brilliant about it is the kids that I imparted that motto to were in high school, where they were almost forced to try to conform, right? And they were trying to find out who they were,
Yeah.
right? And of course, when they came into my arena, I made them say, "Hey, you be who you want to be, right? You don't have to be. I'm not going to tell you who to be. I'm going to give you all these opportunities to express yourself. But hey, and of course, I was the only one that not necessarily judged them. I had to give them a grade, right? So, and I also had to, I'm trying to make them better actors or whatever, right? Impart that. So in some regards, I had to judge them and their performance, but I never really judged them as people. I accepted them completely. And, they were trying to form who they were going to be. And, I think I gave everybody the confidence of saying, hey, I can be who I want to be. Crayk says, dare to be different. Darn it. I don't want to, be like this guy over here that's, wearing the same clothes as his buddy over there or whatever. I don't have to jump on any trends. I can set my own trend. I can do what I want. And I'm safe to do it in here,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to take that off. And a lot of them took that off into life. I mean, we have a lot of successful people from that group of people, and varying success. And then of course, we're not going to really judge what is success. I mean, if they're happy,
Yeah.
they're happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Success. Hey, for me, man, success is liking myself. I'm able to be myself and like myself. I'm proud of what I'm able to express. I think that's successful to me. I never really had a ton of money or nothing, but I got a ton of other currency, man. I'm rich in other ways. So I'm feel pretty successful myself anyway.
What's really weird is throughout my whole life, I never, passed money. And if you knew how much money I spent over the course of my career back into my classroom, right? I mean, people would go, "What you spent?" I mean, it's well over $100,000.
Oh,
Imagine if I had $100,000 now, I could probably do a lot of fun things with that. But
Yeah.
I poured it back into my classroom, right? Because I didn't want the kids to be without. I wanted to do these special things, and it was all about giving to them. And what's really interesting, when I ended and everything was over, I'm not teaching actively anymore. I mean, you always are a teacher. I was blessed. I mean, I have enough money to live out the rest of my whole life and probably leave some to my kids. I mean, I don't know how that happened, but I managed to be blessed too. I mean, if you've seen my house here above the beach in Oregon,
Yeah.
I mean, you would go, wow, that's something a teacher got, because let's be honest, they underpay teachers. But, the monetary rewards, which are fleeting anyways, come on top of that. So it's like when you talk about a happy, relaxed man, it's me, because not only did I get blessed by all the interactions I had with all of you, but now in my golden years, I'm able to enjoy my golden years like no other time. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm blessed in all so many ways.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Well, and you also go ahead.
but no, monetarily, whatever, possessions, all that kind of stuff, which really don't mean much. But, a lot of times people go after the dollar, right? That's what their career is about.
Yeah.
I say, don't follow the money. The money comes. It just
Yeah.
comes. I don't know
Yeah.
how it does, but it just does. And you just have to have the faith to go forward and do what your muse tells you to do. Your muse.
Yeah. 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 I've always felt that money is like the symptom of you doing, what you want to be doing. It's like it just always seems like it figures itself out. I want to say, so you just mentioned the muse. I can't resist that. Have you read Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art? Have you heard of that or read that book?
No, but it sounds like something I should put on my reading list.
Oh, dude, it's so good. It's a pretty short read too. I listen to on Audible. He's a great read. He's such a great writer, Stephen Pressfield, that he takes. I imagine him to just blah his books out, and then he takes every single sentence and condenses it down into a line of poetry. That's the way I see it. Like every sentence stands on its own so well. He's a great author. But anyway, he talks about the muse and as a creator, as an artist. What you do is you get yourself out of the way so the muse can come through.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not so much about, it just takes you out of the equation. Like it's like you just remove yourself and you get yourself into the environment. Like he talks about, he doesn't wait for inspiration to write. He puts himself in an environment to hear inspiration or whatever, because at 9 a.m. every day he sits down to write, and so he makes himself like an open vessel for the muse to come through by making his schedule happen. So, man, I want to explore this a little bit more. The muse, I will mention this out loud just because I understand some people trip it up. I do want to branch into words like spirituality. I would like to even talk about God here eventually too. But I know those are like such heavy words for people. So just when I'm talking about it, know that I'm kind of talking about like the universe, God, spirituality, our higher self. I kind of do clump a lot of these things in, and I just don't want anybody like shut off this conversation because I use the word spirituality. So just as that caveat, Dave, tell me about like the muse, spirituality. Like, how do you see this? Does that ring a bell to you at all? Like you kind of get out of the way and the muse works through you. Does it feel like that at all in your experience?
Well, what's really interesting is it's kind of a frame of mind that I get into. It's like sometimes it comes at the most weirdest times, and it's like I get this urge to create. So I really feel like I'm open to creating all the time, right? And that being that open to that, it's just the inspiration comes. Like I was telling you about Dare to Be Different, it just kind of, that whole idea came to me. And I write poetry a lot, and sometimes I go months without writing poetry. And then all of a sudden it's like I'll write 4 or 5 poems, and it might be that I listen to Jethro Tull or something, and all of a sudden I want to write music.
Yeah.
It was something that's been happening lately, even though I've done this throughout my life. I run into this guy, and he's an interesting guy, and he's a former vet that's got PTSD, and he struggles with life really hard, but he's an amazing musician. The dude sounds like Bob, and he sings like Bob Dylan, which is really kind of cool. But him and I, we went to this thing on Thursday nights. It's kind of like a place where people create. Creative Minds Called to Create, it's called.
That's cool.
And so we would sit there, and he would go, okay, we should write a song together. And I said, okay, let me, let's come up with a melody. And we were in this thing, and we're just sitting there, and he was just playing the guitar, and all of a sudden this melody came to me. And of course, being a poet and a writer and all this kind of stuff that I've always been, the words for the song just came out like as we were writing the songs, I started writing the lyrics, and I, kind of hummed the melody that was spinning around in my head, and he started banging it out on the guitar. And next thing, we got this song called Jesus Keeps Us Straight that we recorded and we performed and everything else. And, I'm not saying it's a terrific song, but I think it stands on its own, right? And the whole idea is, I was trying to have a relationship with this guy that really needed me. He was looking to me for advice a lot because he struggles with life, and, out of that came the song, so I could have said, nah, I can't write a song. No, that stuff, right? And have self-doubts. But I didn't. I said, yeah, I can write a song. I could do this. And that's a part of the deal too, is I don't think there's anything in this earth. I can't dunk a basketball, but that if I put my mind to it, I couldn't achieve. And I've always had that attitude. And I think, I've always been a creative type and a rebellious type, and inspiration comes to me almost constantly. I mean, I got books and books and books of poetry that I've written down, and I don't really care if people think it's good or not. It doesn't matter, It's just that I have the urge, and I can't resist it. I have to create. It's just who I am. So I've been open to that pretty much my whole life. I mean, if you even go back to my English class back in the 10th or 11th grade, I was writing this poetry beyond my years, at least to the, the teachers, right?
Yeah.
And so and then when you get those kind of feedback and you get positive reinforcement, this is, hey, maybe I have this talent. We all are so talented at something. There is something that we do really super good, and to be open to the fact, but, to have those ideas that I can't do anything, or, so sort of self-defeating prophecy kind of words towards ourselves, then we can be open to that muse. But if you're open, hey, I can do anything I want to do,
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I just have to put the pen down on the
Yeah.
paper, or I have to listen to my brain and it gives me a melody, or I'm with somebody else that has some talent, and we take our talent and create something together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're around other creative people, you're going to create something, man. You can't help yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all listening to our muse then, and man, some really amazing things can happen. Look what happened on my stage. That's kind of what happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it reminds me of Terrence McKenna has some sort of quote about trusting the universe, and you jump off the cliff and you realize it's actually just a feathery bed. He says nature loves courage, and I really believe that, and I really think I also wonder if you have a perspective on this. What about those of us who are deemed creatives? Like we've touched that. We know that, like, okay, I can kind of be this conduit of creation and make beautiful things, and it feels really right relationship to me. It feels really like, okay, I'm doing something that, like, I think maybe only I can do, and it feels really it's reassuring, reaffirming as I'm doing all these things. But on the opposite side, I've also noticed that intense energy doesn't just go away if I'm not creating. It actually kind of like, it can kind of fester in me, actually. If I don't find creative outlets, that doesn't mean that my connection to, like, this intense energy stops. I think that I'm just kind of learning I can be just kind of an intense guy. And if I don't find ways to express myself, if I don't find ways to, like, write poetry and make music, or do my art here, or even, like, I've been on the journey of just got my meditation teacher certification. And so even, like, filtering my creativity and my passion into that is just so fulfilling to me. But do you see, or do you think that when creatives don't have an outlet, but they continue to get that, like, intense energy, do you see that it being troublesome? Do you see, basically, I'm saying I think creators have to create, or we really get in our own heads, and we really we have a lot of heaviness that we carry around. Do you see that to be true?
So, like I said, I'm bombarded constantly with creativity. So I either have to put it down to pen, or I have to create something, or negative things happen. And I think it's true. If you look at all the creative types in the world, and you look at their personal lives, most of them have trash personal lives, and they start imbibing on substances, and they get addictions, and that ends up destroying their life. And what's really bad is when you get, if you don't, when all this energy comes your way and you don't create, it does bottle up, I think, and then it manifests itself in negative ways. I mean, because yeah, I think so, and that's why so many of them that are creative types. I mean, there's a guy that, I mean, it just was terrible to hear his passing. Chris Cornell used to be the lead singer for Soundgarden. Great looking guy, beautiful family he had. Um, what a storied career he has. He is one of the greatest singers I've ever heard. I mean, let's face it, the dude can sing. And he committed suicide. I mean, it's because he's probably bombarded with all these, what he would call demons, right? But if you continue to create, I think, and you release that energy, then those kind of things don't happen. You don't turn it in on yourself, because that's a danger. That's probably why I've dealt with depression my whole life, is because there's been some times in my period of time where it's like I should have created, and I stagnated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, then I turn everything in on myself, do pity parties and self-doubt, and, start saying I'm not a good person and all that kind of stuff. And then, luckily, I have some coping mechanisms that got me back on track. Right. But
Yeah.
not everybody has those. And that's what happens to these tortured artists. They end up turning things in on themselves, or they lash out their relationships, or they numb the pain, right?
Yeah.
Because when you have all those things coming hitting you constantly as a creative person, it's hard to channel it.
Yeah, I wonder if you had this when you were younger. Did you have I had this weird, like, fan, like, the 27 Club I had this like
Oh yeah.
weird. So for one, I had this, and this is like a much deeper thing, and I've talked about it on other areas of the podcast. But I will say I had this kind of knowing that I was going to be part of the 27 Club. I know it's kind of intense to like just throw on the conversation, but it was just kind of like I really had to face it. I really had to like when I dug it out, I really had to be like really look right at it and go, what am I doing? I'm like thinking this is the coolest thing ever. Like, oh, they'll really appreciate me as an artist once I'm gone. It was like this weird obsession with that, Jimi Hendrix and all in Kurt Cobain and all these, the 27 Club. I'm sure everybody
Right.
listening is, if they're an
Yeah,
artist,
Janis
they've heard of it.
Joplin, Jim Morrison,
Yeah. And so I
Amy
had this,
Amy Winehouse now too.
yeah. And I don't know, I wonder if you had this when I was younger anyway. I definitely don't feel this way anymore. And I had to really face it and deal with it and work through all my, quote unquote demons and stuff around it. But I thought it was so sick. I thought it was this cool thing. I don't know what it was. Like it was something that I almost wanted to happen in this strange way. I idolized it. I don't know what it was, but I don't know. Did you experience that at all? I mean, you said you dealt with like some levels of depression. You're clearly a creative person. You're around a lot of creative people. Maybe even if you didn't, do you see it in other people, around the ages of say 18 to 26? Do you see other people kind of idolize this 27 Club? I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think, what's really all of us are kind of preoccupied with people of celebrity, right? Famous people. And often, especially when you're talking about people like Kurt Cobain, I mean, he spoke to a generation of people. I mean, he was pretty influential.
Yeah.
Jim Morrison spoke to a generation of people. He was a poet. His lyrics are pretty powerful. One of the greatest things I would do in my class, I would teach all the classic styles of poetry, right? This is because I had to teach English along with drama, right? And the kids would groan, oh my gosh, we have to do poetry. Oh my gosh, And so then we'd go through this journey. And there was this one part in my poetry unit that I had. I would read them this poetry, I would just start reading this poetry. And I said, well, who do you think this is? And, they would come up with all kinds of names. Oh, Robert Frost. Oh, whatever. And someone would say, well, I have no idea. And I'd say, it's Tupac Shakur. I say, this is Tupac. They're like, what? This is Tupac? Yeah. He was a poet? I go, yeah, look at this book.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll be up here for you to borrow if you want. And then I started sharing some of his poetry. Brilliant stuff, I mean, he's another guy who had a tragic end, right? But I think, we're through that preoccupation and we think that they're, everything they do is cool. I mean, that's why we call fans, right? It's, you're a fan of them and fanatic is, the shortening of that is really means fanatic. You're a fanatic for these people. So to say that, hey, I want to be that great. I mean, these people live in our hearts or minds, or depending on what influence they had on you. I mean, still remember Jim Morrison. I listen to the Doors once in a while. Kurt Cobain, I mean, Nirvana thing, that was amazing when that happened. I mean, I was an older man, but I mean, I wasn't that old, I was in my 30s, but and that was a long time ago, but man, I mean, he was speaking to a whole generation of people. So yeah, I say we kind of like glorify that, and I think we look to people that are icons like that,
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, people are impressionable. They want to latch on to something. They want some direction. Yeah. They don't like looking inside because when they look inside like that, then they find out that they're fragile and they're not talented like Kurt Cobain. I mean, who could be that talented,
Yeah.
It's like you're talking about what's his name? Dave Grohl, right? He's had this famous career with the Foo Fighters, amazing career with them. But you know what? He's second fiddle to that guy. Kurt Cobain's like even higher than him, in the stratosphere of rock guys. But I think I'm trying to think of who that would have been for me. Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably like maybe James Dean or there's another guy that from a generation people wanted to be like James Dean, and he died really young too. I don't know. Is he a member of the 27 Club? He might be.
I feel like he is. I feel like I've heard his name in that. I bet if we looked it up, he probably is.
Yeah. Well, but anyways, I'm just saying is every generation has those people that speak to them. And, I mean, I've been always interested in music. So Kurt Cobain, I mean, I was like, wow, this is different, you know. It's like
Yeah.
this is so different, you know.
Well, I mean, and at that time, I could only imagine. I mean, I obviously love Nirvana, but I don't know that I was like exactly. I think I was too young to like really feel that I was on the pulse of it. But it sounds like
Right.
from what I hear, it's like, you know, there's all these '80s bands and like they're all Kiss and the makeup and they're all performative and they're wearing the leather pants. And then Kurt Cobain came out with his flannel and was like, "Fuck that," you know, like, and that's sick. That's cool. You know, that's
Yeah,
at that
people are
time.
still
I bet that
dressing
was
like that in the Northwest, you know. They still look
yeah.
like there's tons of kids that are even young kids are looking like Kurt Cobain, you know.
Yep, dang right. Yeah. I still definitely I wear my flannels and people still make I'm here in Texas, but people are like, oh, I could see your Pacific Northwest shining through right now. Like, yeah.
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 Well, you maybe should wear your flannel with a cowboy hat.
I'll tell you what. Yep. Yep. I haven't got a cowboy hat. I will say that pretty much within a month I said y'all, and now it's just a part of my vocabulary. I'm a y'aller now. I say y'all way more than you guys nowadays. So.
Yeah, you all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so on the 27 Club part, I just wanted to bring that up. I just think that for me anyway, I think that I was idolizing kind of the wrong parts of it. I think as I started approaching that age myself, I started thinking of like, oh, like what? I have all these ideas and all these things I want to do, and I haven't done them, and maybe they'll be looked at if I'm gone. And I think that I started idolizing the wrong parts of it when I could have been idolizing the outcomes of my own long-term impact. Like instead of like, how much could I get everybody to watch me before I'm 26? It's like, what about doing a podcast where if I keep doing this for 20 years, like, you know, I might be able to really impact some people over the course of 20 years, you know, instead of like trying to be like the brightest right now. I want the most attention right to the top. It's like, what about long-term, just doing what you can day in and day out, like the long-term benefits in it. I just feel like my mind has it has peace there, you know. It's I think a lot of this, I got to prove myself before I turn 27. It has this like, you know, this just gripping, this pressure that doesn't need, you know, we really just need that opening of the fist, like just the allowing of your art to come through rather than trying to like catch it all and make everyone look at it right now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, 27 is pretty young. I mean, most of us live to 77, 80 or something nowadays. So 50 years to give up where you could be creating and influencing people, you know, just so you could be the brightest star and then fizzle out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, to me, it just
well said.
It's just better to do the long haul. It's more courageous.
I think so too, man. I think so too. I like it. Thank you for expressing your views on that. I want to ask you a little bit more about your spiritual practice. So not only your spiritual practice, just kind of your way of centering yourself and everything, but also if it correlates, can you tell me about your ways of, you know, back then and even now as you get older, what are your ways, like when you notice that you're kind of in those spots, maybe you've had like, maybe you notice, oh, okay, I've been kind of like depressed. I kind of have been, you know, maybe ignoring the phone more than I want to, or whatever this looks like for you. How do you pull yourself out of those times? And then outside of that, even outside of your break glass in case of emergency situations, I would love to know kind of like what your spiritual practice looks like on a day-to-day basis. Like what is that like for you?
So one of the things that I do, and you can call it what you will, pray or meditate. And since I've done that, and I've also, you know, I mean, you can say what you will, but I've always been a Christian person, right? I believe in Christ. And so every day I study a different scripture in the Bible and I try to apply it to my life. And since I've done that, and it's been since I've retired pretty much, and actually really more intense in the last couple of years, and along with that, I've become more of a listener and observer of people. But since I've been doing those things, studying the scriptures, praying and meditating, and unplugging, you know, not like going right to watch UFC fights or something, right? Even though I do enjoy that, but and kind of spending some time in nature. Like I took on this sport called disc golf, and it's kind of like every time you play it, you're out in nature, and the whole time I'm playing, because I'm pretty terrible at disc golf. I mean, somebody would probably say, "Oh no, you're pretty good, Dave," but compared to some of the really good ones, I'm really, way average, right? But of course, at 68 years old, who cares if I achieve anything?
Yeah.
The bottom line is I'm out in nature, I'm getting exercise. And that's another thing too, is I've been working on keeping my body more fit. I've been going to the gym and stuff like that. And it sounds really weird, but it is kind of a spiritual practice. It's disciplining yourself, right? And with unplugging and disciplining yourself and studying the scriptures and all that stuff, all of a sudden I started hearing, like when I'm presented with a problem or something, I get this little voice in my head that tells me almost immediately what I should do. And I've been listening to that voice, and it's made all the difference in the world. It's been so powerful for me. Oh my goodness. And not only what's really cool about it is I've been able to impart this kind of way that I'm being in, this vibe that I'm sure I'm translating to other people, and it's been helping others too. And so that's kind of what I mean by being spiritual is I've kind of disciplined myself to a certain degree to do certain things, like complete changeover of the way I used to be. And since I've been doing that, I've been getting this little spiritual guy in my brain, and I'm not bargaining with them anymore. You know what I mean?
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
I'm not bargaining anymore. Right now, I'm listening to them and I'm taking action. I'm listening and doing what this little voice is telling me.
Does that little voice ever have you do anything like kind of like, well, I don't know, is that really what I should do? Like, I mean, you say you don't bargain with it, but
There was a time when I bargained with it when I first started turning towards being more spiritual. But now I've been listening to it, and nothing better than when you listen to it and then something great happens, right? And
yeah.
you get that reinforcement, and then you're like, okay, well, why would I bargain with it? Why would I, start saying, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this? No, I throw caution to the wind, and it hasn't failed me.
Now, do you, I mean, it kind of just gets into words, I guess, and it probably severs something that doesn't need severed. But so would you call that intuition? Would you call that like spirit, soul? Like, do you have any names, or does it matter to you? Does it?
Well, I don't think it really matters, even though, in a Christian point of view, would say that, oh, that's the Holy
Sure.
Spirit, right?
Sure, yeah.
But it really doesn't matter. Frankly, I'm being guided by whatever's in my brain, right? And
Yeah.
and I think we all, even from from an early age, we really know what the right thing is to do. It's when we start like saying, well, but
Yeah.
that doesn't feel good,
Yeah.
or no, that doesn't make me get recognition,
Yeah.
or
How could I get more? Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't give me any more money, or maybe I shouldn't listen to that. And we do that. I mean, as human beings, that's kind of what we do, is you start bargaining with it and not listening to that voice,
Yeah.
which is telling us really what we should do. And when we ignore it, then some consequences could happen, man.
Yeah, yeah, man. Oh, you know what I heard the other day? These people were talking about, it's not exactly this subject, but I think it does relay. They were saying, they asked like the smartest man, or like the person with the highest IQ, or someone who studies people with high IQs or something. Basically, like, what is the difference between someone who is like high IQ versus low IQ? And the sentence that he said was basically, the person with high IQ does not listen to the voice inside that says, I'm not getting it. So it's like this constant, just like trust of like, just lean into it. Like, don't second guess yourself. Just kind of like,
Right.
And I don't know, it was crazy when I heard it. I really made me sit back and contemplate. I was like, wow, that's actually pretty, and I don't want to make any big theories about IQ. And I think there's a whole discussion about IQ that doesn't really even fit in here, but it's just as far as us trusting like that little voice and not trying to, I love how you said, don't bargain with it. You don't bargain with it. I think there's something really powerful about that.
Yeah,
So,
just as soon as you don't listen to it and you start bargaining with it, chances are you're going to make a bad decision. Be honest with you, and then you have consequences, and then life beats you up. And when life beats you up, you need to learn the lesson. And if you would just listen to your voice, then you would have avoided that lesson.
yeah. Yeah, there's something about it. And I think it also is something just like when you make promises to yourself and you follow through with them, you're able to trust yourself more. I think when you like commit to following that voice and you kind of trust that voice, it just becomes more intuitive to follow as well. I think there's something pretty sick about that happens as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
Well, so Dave, I just want to, my sister is listening as far as my knowledge. Time wise, if you're willing, I would love to kind of float into, I did promise a Q&A to those who might be tuning in.
Hello, nerds. I hope you're enjoying the episode. If you'd like to listen to the last bit of Q&A, it's 40 minutes of Q&A. It's wonderful. It ties a bow on everything. It's on my YouTube channel, the Junkyard Love Podcast, Junkyard Love and Jacob, FTI, Jacob from the internet. Go check it out. Please hit subscribe, follow, all that. Hit the notification thing. It helps me out. If you liked any of this stuff, share it. I will never copyright you. If you want to clip any of my stuff, do it. Clip it, share it. Cheers. We'll see you next episode.
Reality